Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Ritesh. Again, good morning, Ritesh.
So there has been talk about separating airlines' core operations from retailing, like for initiative like e-commerce and data management. There is a need to relook at the whole thing and keep aside the operations part. So, for example, if there are IT systems, keep aside the systems; those are meant for operations aside, and take out some of the components and blend them with latest merchandising and e-commerce techniques. So what's your viewpoint about this?
You see different models for structuring teams in different airlines. Sometimes you hear of silos, sometimes you hear of separate operating, flying and retailing companies. Look, what's clear to me is that we need to have a language around experimentation. We need to have lower barriers to entry for an idea. You shouldn't have to gamble your career on a potential project in any function, whether it's airline or transport or anything else. So, however that looks, behind your one common strategy, what you're doing with IT, what you're doing with what we call digital now, make sure there's room for running a quick experiment, getting in, trying something and stopping it within the space of 2 months, having just as much time as possible to get data back from actual users. Get in, test, get out. That's the kind of project that you need to be able to run quickly. How that runs then from organizing the team's perspective, you're going to have to ask the CEOs that one. From our perspective, it's always great to work with an agile team on the other side as well. But we know that there's a lot of other projects on, and it's hard to get in on the big picture stuff, and it's hard for the airline project managers to get in on the big IT projects as well. So why not structure it so that there are little projects and big projects?
Given some of these discussions are originating from the fact that a lot of comparisons are being made with companies like Airbnb or Amazon. Do we really need to compare ourselves, because airlines have different business to run? Actually, they own aircraft, and what's your viewpoint about the whole comparison which is being made these days?
You hear about this. It's the classic thing you hear about. Like, you've got the taxi company that doesn't own taxis, the accommodation company that doesn't own properties. Some airlines don't all own their fleet, don't own all of their aircraft either, and that's not a bad thing. At the end of the day, it's always about the customer. We're all in the customer business. We're all in the service business. For airlines, it's very complicated because aircraft are big and we fly them very, very well. So we don't really want to mess around with that too much. But it's always about the customer. And I think that between those three industries, you mentioned Amazon and Airbnb, between all industries, I think we can all share some learning around how to manage the customer journey a little bit better. Whether we're sharing knowledge with Amazon or it's coming the other way, I think it's important to put the customer first and always have the customer first.
Do you think the legacy IT setup which airlines have, it prohibits them from turning into data-centric or customer-centric organizations?
No, I think it's an advantage. You don't have to set up all of the legacy IT infrastructure just to start retailing. It's about what you're doing next and what you're working on next. I advocate for, running little projects behind microservice style infrastructure, doing as little as possible to get the most return at least for experimentation purposes. What happens then at scale, what we would start as an experiment will scale into something else, and it looks nothing like the microservice we started with, but that's another story. Airlines don't have to start from scratch. I think that's an advantage. You've got something that works. What you're doing is you're just changing course a little bit, and that's a huge advantage. You don't have to worry about a giant inventory base that's in flux completely. You do have to worry about acquiring and servicing a customer, and I think that's what we have in common with the Airbnb style applications. I think that artificially and unfairly we compare airline retail to the Airbnb app for some reason. I don't think that's correct. I think customer expectations are a little bit different. I think sometimes it should be even better than the Airbnb app for some things. Sometimes I think it's complete overkill. At the end of the day, we're flying, and we just need to get the flight working and buy, check in, fly. You don't have to worry about the inventory. if you do want a little bit more flexibility, structure your organization to be a little bit more flexible. It's not too hard to imagine, and we see some great stuff going on in even just in the Dublin-based companies around digital transformation.
Kevin, do you think legacy ID setup is an hindrance to being customer-centric in case of airlines?
You hear that a lot, and we always beat up airlines around things like, well, this taxi app is better than yours in terms of customer experience, and the Airbnb or Hotel Tonight style app is better than yours for this and that reason. I don't think that legacy IT has to be a hindrance. I think that it needs to be more flexible, and I think there's ways of making your project or your organization or your IT setup more flexible. But airlines, you have to remember, have the huge advantage of having inventory, which the other guys don't. And we can take from that, in whichever way we love to or hate to, we can take from that great capability. And then it's just about making it shine. It's not about completely reinventing an entire vertical, you're just changing the top. And for that you just need the right digital guys on top just to make it look and operate well. And you plug into the right systems in the back end. You might have 3, you might have 20, it doesn't matter. You might be changing all of this completely, but you're only changing the top at the customer facing side. And that leaves actually more room for innovation, I think. This part, if you're changing it, great. If you're changing it around NDC, fine. But you're only changing the top, you're changing the edge, you're not changing everything. So you have a huge advantage, I think, compared to, say, the taxi and the accommodation apps. You've got a lot of advantages, and I think we should leverage them more. I don't think we exploit that enough as an industry.
Fair enough. Thanks a lot, Kevin, for your time.
Cheers, Ritesh.